Just going to welcome. This is the AOC staff podcast. This is a one-off from our normal media literacy focus. On a regular podcast, you'd be having Christy tell you what we're doing. But today we're going to talk about something that's super important. It's critical that everybody in our country understands this kind of thing right now. We're going to talk about the whole idea that social media has become the preeminent way we communicate, and that social media now has responsibilities that they're exercising by cutting some people's means of communication off. A lot of argument that that's a First Amendment violation. I think we're going to talk to you a little bit about the First Amendment and explain it's not a First Amendment violation at all. But it is, I think, and I'll present this as my statement and let the staff respond. I think it's a severe violation of the concept of the First Amendment that everybody should be able to speak and dialogue should be free-flowing and unrestricted. I don't want to come down on either side yet because I know what the other argument is too. It's sedition, man. What are you going to let them do? If you don't stop them for running sedition, when do you stop them? So that's what I want to hear feedback from you guys about, so the viewing public will understand our opinions and the absolute fact that the First Amendment idea is very applicable, but it is not legally applicable at all. Or am I wrong? Go, Matt. I can see your head shake.
I'm ready. Well, so I always like to, look at the text and take from the text, because I feel like that's what we're going from, right? So the First Amendment encompasses all these feelings and connotations that we put on it. But if you look at the text, the only thing that's limited by the First Amendment, the only thing that can have handcuffs put on it by the First Amendment is the government. So Congress is the subject of it. They can make no law that will, let's see what the actual text, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. So protesting, essentially. But so the government is the person or the entity that's limited in that interaction, as the Constitution is developed to do. It's not meant to limit the people. It's meant to limit the government's restrictions of the people. So that my argument. Oh, sorry, I lost you, Ed. I don't know if you muted.
No, I muted, but I'm just saying, class, pay attention. This is important.
Well, and so unfortunately what that means to me, it doesn't make my opinion very popular, because I say that Facebook and everything else, they do technically have the right to limit what's published on their platforms. Now, there is a new and sort of nuanced argument that's going on over whether Facebook has, or social media in general, has surpassed that private entity situation to become a public utility. Similar to the way that landlines and phones became a public utility at some point and therefore got, regulated because of the way they were up. But I saw some symbols, Ed, but...
That hand sign means 230, section 230 is what you're alluding to.
Okay, and see, I'm not even hip to that. I've just heard the talks of they've become a utility now, and I haven't heard an argument that really.
It's very relevant to what AOC's role in the communication food chain is. If we become a producer rather than a platform, we become subject to different rules and regulations. A platform is currently a platform. If that's what you are, you're not subject to punishment for what happens on your platform. People can do what they want to do, and those people get busted. The platform does not. And YouTube, Facebook, social media in general takes the attitude when it's convenient that they are a platform. And by being a platform, they have no say-so, and they take no role on their content, which is a complete lie. They totally control their content beyond legal. They are producers, in fact, of their content, because they manipulate it, they control it, they censor it, and they turn it on and off depending on what they like. So they are. I think that's my argument when I go to court. They are not a platform. They are producers, and they're subject to the things that come like responsibility. You're responsible for what you put on your channel. AOC, and one of the reasons we emphasize that we don't want to do the productions for individuals, particularly individuals that are adversarial or issuing opinions, is because when we become producers, we become liable. We want them to be liable, not us. That's what the pink sheet's all about. That's why that's an important thing to have as well. So Section 230, which Trump is his idea is that it's a bad deal, that we need to hold those platforms responsible. In response to this threat, the platforms have all said, throw out these people. And I, on the one hand, agree that those people should have been thrown out. Who says so?
Well, the fact of the matter is that they were foregoing their normal terms of service because of the unprecedented nature of that guy's role. So that guy was president of the United States. They felt that as like a public service, the same way that broadcasters, and I think they just did it in a sort of volunteer way. I think they're thinking hard about what they are responsible for and aren't, but he would have been kicked off long ago if he weren't the president, and that's the fact of the matter. The fact is they kicked him off way late according to their own terms of service, and their rationale for that was that because he's the president. Same reasoning his doctor gave when they asked why he got the treatment for COVID. He's the president.
I think the president should have the ability to supersede some restrictions and not others. Handling him with kid gloves, let's make believe they busted him 6 months ago, or his sycophants 6 months ago. Is that the right thing to do? What does it say about us as consumers that we're going to let half a dozen old rich billionaires, not even necessarily old anymore, but a couple of billionaires, decide for us what we're going to get to consume?
I'm just going to take a half step back to what Matt was saying, just like the small print, the terms of service that they got late to making an example of the president is sort of an afterthought, but they were violating their own terms of service from the beginning. So they kind of null and voided what they required everybody to do and what they held everybody to. So I think it was just messed up from that point on, and it's their own fault. So, I mean, they shouldn't be blaming the other people for the message that they're putting out there.
Well, and to be legally fair too, their terms of service essentially say we can make any arbitrary decision about this at any time, any way we choose, and you have no recourse. And that's what you click agree to when you sign up for it. Everybody does. That's the checkbox. Ed, you brought up pink sheets earlier, which I just wanted to mention for anybody viewing at home. A pink sheet is like our terms of service. It's a one-page document that you sign to put your stuff out on AOC. It has a few, essentially it's like don't break the law. You can read through them on our website. It's actually now a digital form, not even a pink sheet. That's days of old. Another days of old thing I wanted to remind us of, though, we used to say this all the time in Access, is that we forget as consumers that we do have some choice in this interaction. And we used to say when it was TV that we were talking about, you have the right to change a channel if you don't like what you're seeing. We're here to provide that platform for people. If you don't like it, change the channel. And everybody has that right. I was not on Facebook for all of the previous administration's presidency. And, I think I'm somewhat healthier for that. Where I would have been without that.
You're mentally healthier, it's a guarantee. Anybody who stayed on Facebook can tell you the scars that this puts on you, even by very subtle tensions it adds to your life. That stuff adds up, those little subtle tensions. But I'm going to argue, counter to what you said, you have a choice in this matter. You think you have a choice, and you do have a choice between death by fire or death by smothering or death by drowning, but you don't necessarily have a chance for life. These algorithms, and I don't want to say big money people, but the systems that are in place are bigger and decide for you what you're going to see. We think, I got the World Wide Web, man. It's all at my fingertips, but it's delivered to you in a package that tells you things. And that's my statement on you have a right to choose. Is maybe you do, maybe you don't. But if all of your neighbors are on Facebook, no matter what you choose, Facebook influences them significantly. So it's one of those be on the side or have it chosen for you situations.
The illusion of choice, like they're pre-approving things for you to choose, kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
It's like a food and agriculture, all those things. Yeah, it's everywhere, man.
They programmed me to disengage from their platforms.
As a podcast from a group, this is pretty much three-sided.
I just think that, like Matt said, I mean, it's just, you say you don't have a choice, but tell that to the people that don't get on. I mean, what a terribly emotionally scarring waste of time social media is. It's just, it is a choice. And more and more people who have non-depressive tendencies don't use it. It's just not useful. It is not a useful expenditure of your time. What's that?
That's why I haven't used it in 8 or 10 years, is I think it's pointless.
Well, it's not just pointless. It is actively causing you mental harm. There's nothing it's doing for you. Literally, it's not doing anything for you except, oh, you had a day, but not anymore. You don't. Your day's gone. Sorry. Maybe tomorrow will be better. Oh, no, that's right. It won't be, because you get on social media. They've done studies. Kids who play video games, they are not necessarily depressed outside of the mean. People, children especially, who use social media are depressed, and a larger chunk of them than the background population kill themselves. So that's what we have right now. And I don't think that the free speech topic has anything to do with what social media is wreaking. So that's my. I mean, we need to have a whole different conversation.
Well, no, I think that's a perfect place to catch you to the next level. You completely. I agree totally with what you said. Social media is a cancer. Now, it's a cancer that along the way that it kills you and atrophies your muscles and your brain and your cognitive discipline and everything. It gives you enough serotonin to keep you happy, and they're not happy. Let's say compliant.
Addicted.
But addicted. Yeah, okay, good word. Addicted, compliant. You do keep going back. The answer is to disengage.
Yeah. I don't care if people are addicted to heroin for me not to do it.
How do we engage people through social media to tell them to not be there? Don't get off of Facebook. It's a terrible thing for you.
Another thing just to mention, I mean, and you all know me, the Eternal Optimist, but there is something neat about this technology. There's a reason that people gravitate towards it, because we see the potential. It's like they figured out how to make the bulletin board experience that only nerds could enjoy, in the early aughts or late 90s. They've turned that into a thing that everybody can enjoy. They've taken the benefit factor. Now, unfortunately, they've also started farming your eyeballs, but there are other examples of social media platforms, like for one, and I haven't mined it in depth, and William turned me onto it, but Reddit as a social media community to me is a much less toxic or much easier to sort of navigate. It doesn't have, I don't check Reddit like once a day. I check it once a week, and it provides me with good local social interaction. They also have a public access interface, which I would suggest everybody check out, because it is an interesting thing, but it's what public access is. It's people with cameras, sometimes cleaning their living room, sometimes playing a guitar, sometimes, playing video games. But there's also, I know I think the Wikipedia people were working on some sort of social media platform, but I don't think it got a lot of steam. I don't know if anybody else knows about it.
So methadone for heroin.
Somebody's going to make $1 billion while we can still have billionaires in the wild, wild west. Somebody's going to make $1 billion finding a way to combine the aspects of video games that are useful and the aspects of social media that is useful. And, I don't know what that looks like, but I mean, definitely in 10 years, we're going to laugh about Facebook like we laugh about MySpace, whether Facebook likes it or not. The difference is that Facebook saw what happened to MySpace and used its wealth to gobble up competitors. That's something that we need to talk about legislation for.
True that. And I mean, they are right now. They're talking about the monopolistic, whether they're antitrust. I don't know where they are. I'm not following close enough, but I did see that that was the latest question, which should have been a question a long time ago.
Yeah.
Change in administration is going to have a big effect on antitrust and monopolistic tendencies and predatory practices and so forth.
You wish.
Well, I'm looking forward to the opportunity. Elizabeth Warren's on the warpath already. I think she might.
Jacob, I will say to what you were talking about, combining video games and social media into I don't know if you were talking about a mineable resource, but
Yes.
I believe in India right now, what they're setting up is they're paying users to use Google Maps and to essentially populate it. And I think it's that, but it's essentially there's a Google app you can use and you can get paid to use it as sort of like a data miner.
Yeah, gamifying it. Yeah,
yep,
that's
totally.
Super cool.
Wow.
And I mean, they're doing it here. Here you can get badges for contributing to maps. They're not paying you yet, but I'm sure at some point.
They're giving you that serotonin boost. Hey, look, I got a badge, man. Let me do that again. The aspect of how they play this, that's a whole nother conversation. I don't want to drag this on all day. And we've gotten a little bit away from, is it the right thing or the wrong thing for 5 rich billionaires to determine what we get to see and not see? Did they do the right thing to throw the insurrectionists off after they had insurrected? Should they have been responsible ahead of time? Or should we let everybody speak and make sure everybody does get to speak and deal with the consequences of that conversation, no matter how rough? That's 3 questions.
Well, I don't know if this answers in any of those particularly, but I remember Facebook when it started, it was designed only for college atmosphere. So you had to be in school to have connection with someone else that was in school, and that was the requirement. And as soon as your college-based email went null, you couldn't have an account anymore. But luckily, I was in that phase where they transitioned as it was growing into more people, more schools could talk to each other, and then cities and whatever. So, whenever it was just based around schools and networking in those areas, it was fulfilling what the magic of Facebook was. I think it had a really good potential. It was growing to fill it. And there were some bad sides, there was bad and bickering and venting and stuff like that. But it was much more controlled, it seemed. And it was new, so people didn't necessarily know how to exploit it and use it as their main voice. But I think that's where they started losing their power to control. It was whenever they just started letting everybody have anything, any corporation, and finding out that money could be made from data mining and all these things. So it's just the natural growth of tech. But I think they lost what they originally had in their mind about it and the magic of what that could be.
Well, it is magic for some, but I think it's perfect that the creators of Facebook became billionaires because one of the main uses for Facebook was, the face. Like, let's find the good-looking faces. Let's use this to exploit. Like, that's what it was for. I want to find the hot women, and I want to be able to get at them. I mean, that was what Facebook was, and that tells us what this technology is for. It's exploitative at its core, and now we've kind of inverted the way that it exploits. But yeah, anyway.
I don't recall the name of it, but I read a good book, and actually John St. Julian and I had a phone conversation with the author. Basically, that says that the internet has its own mindset and its own motives, and it does its own thing, regardless of what the humans think they're doing. And it's very compelling, and I can't even give you a good summation other than the thing has its desires, and it reaches those desires by forcing people to buy into it. It consumes new data. It is going to morph into uncontrollable, like Facebook morphed into this huge, whatever it is. It's unstoppable. If you don't do it, the next person is going to layer on what you did, and it's got its own life now. It's going to do what it's going to do. Getting control is not going to happen. We have to figure out how to use it, and that hasn't worked out to the benefit of the community because we're using it to make money above all else. And sometimes money is more important than the cure for cancer or telling people the truth or anything else. I'm in favor of the government putting responsibility and liability on social media platforms, and they suffer the consequences of what they allow to go on their channel with certain caveats. Obscenity is certainly against the law. Copyright violations are against the law. There's 9 or 10 things. Matt has the list probably in front of him that you can't do.
I did have a question about that proposal, though, because that's a proposal that people make a lot. But what do you think your likelihood to sign up for a social media account if you had to sign a contract that made you beholden to Facebook for the content you put out? So, like, if they're suddenly financially liable for what you're putting, like when I went to work as a board op at a radio station, I had to sign like 5 contracts between me and the FCC, between me and the station, and it essentially said that I was only going to put on the air what they allowed me to put on the air. So how does that change your interaction with that platform if suddenly you become sort of like an employee for them, or not an employee, but you're contractually obligated to uphold, and maybe there's a financial burden on it?
If I understand what you're saying correctly, I think as the person who presents the material, I should be expected to be responsible for the material I present particularly on an open social platform like that. I think it's completely reasonable that there should not be an account called Uncle Eddie's Donuts, which I happen to have if you want to go looking around, all those kind of things. They're fun, but they should be clearly labeled bogus or some other. I think the person who says it should be responsible for it at all times, whether they say it on Facebook or anything else. And I don't. If Facebook was really just a platform and was not a gigantic manipulative thing, if it was just a platform, I'd be a whole lot more let it ride, let the insurrectionists use it, let everybody. But when you start manipulating the data and you're going to start using this and using that and playing these games and algorithming what people see, I think it's time to step in and step in and at least acknowledge what you're dealing with. Don't make believe you got something you don't have. Let people know for sure. When you say it, they're going to come to your house. You can't, just like taking a selfie in the Capitol building now. It should be when I'm at home I'm not in my basement. I'm in the second floor window. But if I'm sitting up here doing all this, I should be held responsible, and they should come down and park right there in my driveway, come in the house and take me away for saying it. If I'm an insurrectionist or if I'm calling for the murder of somebody, those kind of things. I think responsibility goes with the pie hole that spouts it, not the platform in between.
I think they have some responsibility, though, the platforms. Like, there are certain types of speech that aren't protected, like direct threats or incitement of violence, and they have to be responsible to stop that when someone is saying it and not allow the spread of it. Even like the non-traditional ones like Reddit still have moderators that are watching for things to pull off of their, and I think that kind of comes along with them being a private entity as well, like a private business. I reserve the right to refuse service to you, the terms of service thing, and they just use that to banhammer these people and kick them off when they do these things. I mean, I don't know. I still think it's in the platform because they own it, to control what people are saying on there. And I don't think that's infringing their freedom of speech. They can say it anywhere else. But if I own the channel, I have a right to tell you you can't incite violence on it, I think.
That goes back to why they should be held responsible, because they do own it and they do have that right. And that's why they should be held responsible ultimately.
And to be fair, they do have those terms in place, and they do ban people all the time for breaking those terms. There's always questions as to the efficiency of that process, because again, it's algorithms that then go to humans, and humans who, by the way, get damaged by that process psychologically because they have to see some of the worst stuff that you've ever seen in the world. A bunch of them have PTSD. But again, like cases like the president, it's a weird situation they're in where part of the blame I think falls on them for pretending they're a utility, but not actually acting like a utility. They want to market themselves as a public good and as a public service, but they know full well that that's not their intention. Their goal number one is making money. So it's advertising. It's keeping your eyeballs to sell advertising.
Psychologically hooking you. That idea, and I think Jacob referred to it as the addiction. It is very much an addictive thing. Lots of science. We can use that word again. Lots of science out there points to the damage this is doing to us every day. The flip side of all that is, hey, guess what, guys? We're having a salient conversation about an important topic because of social media right here. This Zoom thing hasn't damaged anybody, I don't think. Thanks for tuning in. And I hope you get two things out of this. One is that the First Amendment is not necessarily what you think it is. It's the government, not businesses' right to manipulate what is said or not said. It's a protective device on one hand, and it's a sword on the other. But you should learn it before you go into battle using the First Amendment and holding other people accountable.
Check out more on AOCinc.org or like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
That's why he's the man. Love you guys. Matt, you're going to send me this, and I'll put some CG on it.
I'll put it on that drive and send you a link in the email.
Appreciate you, man.